Horus spat in Tyler's face, sneering at the puny human diplomat. "You weak, pathetic humans, always mewling for scraps from your betters. Well, today we make you beg." Tyler Brown wiped the alien spittle from his cheek, glaring at the arrogant Rakari trade minister. He had come to their homeworld to negotiate a desperately needed trade deal. But it was clear the Rakari had nothing but contempt for humanity. As Tyler's shuttle had descended through the atmosphere, he'd marveled at the planet's stunning purple foliage and gleaming silver cities. So different from the gritty urban overpopulation on Earth. But his wonder had quickly turned to unease upon landing. The Rakari guards glared at him with cold disdain, gripping their weapons tighter at the sight of a human. Now Horus towered over Tyler, his four muscular arms folded across his broad chest, dark eyes glinting with barely concealed scorn. So, the humans send a mere whelp to treat with the mighty Rakari Imperium. Typical. Tyler gritted his teeth, determined to stay professional despite the blatant disrespect. As they walked to the negotiation chambers, Horus continued disparaging humanity. He boasted of Rakari strength, technology, intellect, dismissively called humans hairless apes, expressed disdain for humanity's lack of advancement. Tyler listened in stony silence, jaw clenched, a sinking feeling in his gut. This mission might be doomed from the start. If he couldn't secure this trade deal, millions on Earth would starve. Humanity needed those Rakari food exports to survive. But the Rakari knew that too, and they intended to use it as leverage to bring the humans to their knees, to make them beg. Tyler swore he wouldn't give them the satisfaction. One way or another, he'd get that deal. Humanity's fate depended on it. Tyler took a deep breath and began laying out the trade agreement humanity had authorized him to offer. In exchange for your advanced starship designs, Earth is prepared to grant the Rakari exclusive mining rights to several mineral-rich asteroids in our system. We're also willing to share our cutting-edge medical technology, which has eliminated many diseases that still plague your people. I think you'll find it a fair and mutual... Silence! Horus slammed his fist on the table, cutting Tyler off mid-sentence. The other Rakari diplomat snickered, exchanging disdainful glances. You presume too much, human, as if your primitive resources could tempt the Imperium. Tyler felt his face flush with anger and embarrassment, but he forced himself to remain calm. With respect, Minister Horus, I believe you're underestimating what we're offering. If you'll just let me finish... Again Horus interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. I've heard enough. Your proposal is laughably inadequate, an insult, really. Do you take us for fools? The Rakari sneered and grumbled their agreement. Tyler clenched his fists under the table, digging his nails into his palms. This was going even worse than he'd feared. Please, if we could just discuss this rationally, he tried again, struggling to keep the desperation out of his voice. I'm sure we can find a compromise that benefits both our peoples. First is as slaves. Tyler reeled back as if he'd been slapped. He opened his mouth to protest, to express his outrage at the very notion. But before he could get a word out, ear-splitting alarms started blaring throughout the building. Red lights flashed and Rakari soldiers burst into the room, shouting in their guttural language. Horus barked orders at them, then turned to the other diplomats with a triumphant smirk. He pressed a button on the table and a huge holographic display flickered to life in the center of the room. Tyler watched in dawning horror as it showed a massive fleet of Rakari warships dropping out of FTL near Earth. The ships immediately opened fire, lancing through the planet's pitiful orbital defenses like they were made of paper. Horus turned to him, smile widening, eyes glinting with cruel amusement. Did you really think we would sully ourselves by negotiating with the likes of you? Soon, Earth's resources will be ours, and your people will serve us, or die. Tyler felt like he couldn't breathe. His vision swam and he grabbed the edge of the table to keep from collapsing. This couldn't be happening. In a terrible flash of clarity, he realized the Rakari had never intended to bargain in good faith. The negotiations had been a ruse from the start. Earth had been doomed the moment he set foot on this cursed planet, and it was all his fault. He had led his people, his entire species, into a trap, and now, because of his naivete, his arrogance in thinking he could reason with these monsters, humanity would pay the ultimate price. Tyler looked up at the display, at the Rakari ships raining destruction down on his helpless homeworld, and felt a yawning pit of despair open up in his heart. Tyler was dragged out of the negotiation chambers by rough Rakari hands. He struggled against their iron grips, but it was no use. They snapped heavy shackles onto his wrists and ankles. The metal bands hummed and glowed with crackling blue energy, sending painful shocks through Tyler's limbs when he resisted. As they hauled him through the Citadel's twisting corridors, Tyler strained to hear Horus barking orders. "Prepare the processing facility. Ready the slave pens for the first batch of humans. I want them chipped and working within the week." After an interminable elevator ride into the bowels of the Citadel, they arrived at the detention level. The Rakari guards threw Tyler into a cramped cell. The rusted metal door slammed shut with a clang of finality. Tyler pulled himself to his feet and staggered to the single small window. It was barred with crackling energy beams. As his eyes adjusted to the gloom, he gasped. Row after row of identical cells stretched out in front of him. Dozens, hundreds, each one holding a different alien species. Ragged, hollow-eyed beings peered out at him from behind the bars. Some paced their cells like caged animals. Others sat slumped against the walls, all fight gone out of them. Through their alien features, the look in their eyes was the same. Hopeless, broken. Tyler's heart hammered against his ribs as the horrifying truth sank in. This wasn't just a prison. It was a massive forced labor camp. The Rakari hadn't just conquered these other species, they had enslaved them. And humanity was next. Days bled together as Tyler languished in his cell. He was given 2 meals a day, a gelatinous grey slop that smelled like rotting meat. It was barely enough to keep him alive. Rakari guards would come for him at random intervals. They dragged him struggling and shouting to a processing room. There, masked Rakari technicians examined him like livestock. They took samples of his hair, skin, blood, scanned him with strange whirring devices. One time they held him down and implanted a small metallic chip under the skin of his forearm. It beeped and glowed ominously. A tracking device, he realized with mounting dread. He had frantic, whispered conversations with the other prisoners. He learned their stories, each more heartbreaking than the last. The Rakari had been expanding their empire for centuries, conquering pre-FTL civilizations and enslaving them as workers. Some of these aliens had been prisoners for generations. They didn't even know if their homeworld still existed. And now Earth had fallen victim to the Rakari's insatiable hunger for conquest. Tyler thought of his family, his friends, everyone he had ever known. Had they been captured too? Were they being chipped and processed like animals at this very moment? Or had the Rakari bombardment wiped out all life on Earth already? Tyler didn't know which possibility was worse. Tears of grief and rage streamed down his face as he contemplated humanity's grim fate. To live as slaves under the boot of Rakari oppression, or to go extinct, erased from the cosmos, as if we had never existed at all. There seemed to be no hope, no way out of this nightmare. Tyler was just one man, and the Rakari controlled a galactic empire. He sank into despair, realizing he would likely end his days toiling in the Rakari's mines or factories, light years from home. One night, as Tyler lay curled on the hard metal floor of his cell, a sudden explosion rocked the facility. The ground shook, and alarms started wailing. Tyler bolted upright, heart pounding. More explosions thundered in the distance. The staccato thunder of gunfire echoed through the cell block. Inhuman screams mingled with bellowed orders and cries of pain. An acrid smell, like burning meat, wafted through the corridor. Tyler scrambled to the window, hardly daring to hope. Was this a rescue? Had Earth mounted a desperate counterattack? But as he peered out, his blood turned to ice in his veins. The scene outside was one of utter carnage. The Rakari guards were being slaughtered by something. Tyler couldn't quite make out the attackers. They moved with blinding speed, seeming to shimmer and disappear. One of them paused, turning to face Tyler's cell. The creature was tall, at least 7 feet, with night-black carapace armor covering a lean, sinewy frame. Its elongated head was a nightmare of jagged mandibles and compound eyes that glittered with malevolent intelligence. Fayette fixed those unblinking eyes on Tyler and let out an unearthly shriek that made his skull vibrate. Then, quick as a striking snake, it plunged its serrated blade into the chest of a cowering Rakari prisoner. The alien convulsed, ichor spraying from the wound, and went limp. These creatures, whoever or whatever they were, weren't discriminating between Rakari and prisoners. They were killing everyone. Suddenly, with a whine of servos, Tyler's cell door swished open. He stood frozen in shock, staring at the smoke-filled hallway. Klaxons blared and emergency lights flashed red, giving the scene a hellish appearance. Tyler's mind raced as he realized he had seconds to make a choice: stay in the cell and risk being slaughtered like the Rakari and the other prisoners, or make a desperate bid for freedom and take his chances out in the war-torn citadel. Tyler burst out of his cell in a frenzy, heart hammering in his chest. He snatched an energy rifle from a fallen Rakari guard and sprinted down the smoke-filled corridor. Blaster bolts whizzed past his head as he wove between the corpses littering the floor. Rounding a corner, Tyler skidded to a halt. One of the insectoid creatures loomed before him, mandibles snapping, obsidian carapace glistening under the emergency lights. It reared back, preparing to eviscerate him. Tyler didn't hesitate. He raised the rifle and fired, the searing energy bolt punching through the creature's compound eyes. It shrieked, a shrill, ululating cry that made Tyler's teeth ache. Viscous green ichor spurted from its ruined face as it crumpled to the ground, legs twitching. More shrieks echoed from down the hall. A tide of chitinous bodies surged toward him, alerted by their comrades' dying scream. "Shit!" Tyler spun on his heel and sprinted the other way, lungs burning. A cluster of Rakari guards crouched behind a barricade of twisted metal, frantically firing at the oncoming horde. Tyler had a split second to decide. The guards were between him and escape. He raised his rifle and squeezed the trigger, sending a volley of energy bolts into their backs. The guards jerked and sprawled, their cries of pain and surprise drowned out by the battle din. A nondescript door caught his eye, set into the wall just ahead. A desperate plan formed in his mind. He lowered his shoulder and rammed into it at full speed. The door groaned and gave way, revealing a narrow tunnel snaking into darkness. Tyler plunged in without hesitation, the sounds of pursuit close behind. The tunnel wound and twisted, disorienting in the gloom. Tyler's ragged breaths echoed off the close walls. His legs screamed in agony, his lungs felt like they would burst. But he pushed onward, knowing that to stop was to die. The tunnel terminated abruptly, opening into a cavernous chamber. Tyler stumbled to a halt, chest heaving. His eyes widened as he took in the sight before him. Row after row of sleek, predatory starships filled the hangar, emblazoned with the crimson sigil of the Rakari Imperium. A laugh bordering on hysteria bubbled up Tyler's throat. The Rakari's secret fleet, his ticket home to warn Earth. He could steal a ship, escape this nightmarish planet. He took a step toward the nearest vessel. Tyler's hands flew across the alien control panel, guided by the AI's calm instructions. Glowing Rakari glyphs flashed and shifted as he input commands, the ship thrumming with power beneath him. "Disengage docking clamps! Initiate primary thrusters!" the AI intoned. Tyler mashed the corresponding buttons, his heart pounding. With a lurch, the sleek vessel lifted off, hovering for a moment before blasting forward. Tyler was slammed back into the pilot's seat as the ship rocketed through the hangar, narrowly dodging the incoming Rakari security forces. Energy bolts splashed against the shields, making the hull shudder. "Shields at 80%, the AI reported, plotting evasive course. The hangar walls blurred past as the ship corkscrewed and jinked, responding to Tyler's touch like an extension of his body. A fierce grin stretched across his face. They just might make it. The ship punched through the atmospheric containment field and out into the inky void of space. But there was no time to celebrate. Tyler's eyes widened as he took in the scene before him. "Oh shit," Tyler breathed. It was like flying into a blender. The AI highlighted a potential flight path, a narrow corridor threading between the battling dreadnoughts. Tyler swallowed hard and firewalled the thrusters, sending the ship hurtling into the fray. The nimble Rakari vessel slalomed and spun, narrowly avoiding the deadly crossfire. Sizzling beams of energy crackled past, close enough to scorch the hull. "Warning, multiple target locks detected," the AI called, its voice maddeningly calm. Insectoid fighters swooped in, peppering the ship with plasma fire. Tyler juked and jinked, fingers flying over the controls. The AI highlighted the attackers and he stabbed the firing button, sending searing lances of energy stabbing back at the bugs. One fighter exploded, then another, the survivors scattering. "Hell yeah," Tyler whooped, adrenaline surging through his veins. But his elation was short-lived. A shadow fell across the ship as a massive insectoid dreadnought loomed ahead, its gaping hangar bay yawning before them like the maw of some great beast. "Evasive maneuvers!" Tyler yelled, wrenching the controls. But it was too late. The ship shuddered as a tractor beam locked on, invisible forces seizing the hull and dragging them forward. "We're caught," the AI said, a hint of what might have been fear creeping into its synthetic voice. Engines straining to compensate. Failure imminent. Tyler could only watch in helpless dread as the insectoid ship swallowed them whole, the Rakari ship vanishing into its cavernous hold like a minnow gulped down by a shark. The hangar bay doors slammed shut behind them with a resounding clang. Darkness enveloped the cockpit, broken only by the flashing warning lights on the control panel. Tyler and the AI were now trapped aboard an unknown alien dreadnought. Ominous clanking and skittering echoed through the ship's hull as things moved in the darkness outside. Tyler's grip tightened on the controls as he stared out the cockpit window, dreading what fresh horrors might await them. The interior of the insectoid dreadnought was a nightmare of twisting biomechanical corridors. The walls pulsed with a sickly inner light, like the guts of some colossal beast. Tyler found himself in a vast chamber, surrounded by a chittering swarm of Kha'Zix warriors. Their exoskeletons gleamed in the dim light, a forest of razor-sharp limbs and snapping mandibles. One of the creatures stepped forward, looming over Tyler. It was a massive specimen, nearly twice his height, its carapace adorned with jagged spines and pitted scars. It spoke, a rapid series of clicks and chirps, and the Rakari ship's AI translated, "Human, you are now a prisoner of the Kha'Zix hive mind. Your ship and technology will be assimilated. You will be interrogated for information on your species and the Rakari." Tyler's heart hammered in his chest. He glanced around, desperately seeking an escape route, but there was none. The Kha'Zix pressed in from all sides, a living wall of chitin and malice. Then he noticed something. The Kha'Zix seemed to be communicating with each other through a complex dance of pheromones and subsonic vibrations. Their antennae twitched and waved, conveying messages Tyler couldn't begin to decipher. An idea sparked in his mind. He leaned close to the Rakari ship's control panel and whispered, "Can you replicate their pheromone signals? Maybe we can confuse them, make them think I'm one of their own." The AI's reply scrolled across the screen. Affirmative. Analyzing Kha'Zix pheromone structure now. A few tense heartbeats passed. Then a strange smell filled the air, an alien musk that made Tyler's nose itch. The ship's hull began to thrum, emitting a complex pattern of vibrations. Tyler didn't hesitate. He bolted, ducking and weaving through the confused mass of insectoid bodies. Clawed limbs swiped at him, but they were slow, clumsy. He dodged them easily, his heart in his throat. The AI guided him through the labyrinthine corridors, always one step ahead of the pursuing Kha'Zix. Tyler ran until his lungs burned and his legs felt like rubber, but he didn't slow down. He couldn't afford to. Finally, he burst into the dreadnought's hangar bay. His stolen Rakari ship sat in the center, a sleek silver needle amidst the organic curves of Kha'Zix architecture. But it was swarming with insectoid technicians, their multi-jointed limbs probing and prodding at the ship's hull, seeking to dismantle its secrets. Tyler skidded to a halt, despair rising in his throat. He was so close, but he couldn't let the Kaziks get their claws on that advanced Rakari technology. He'd rather destroy the ship than let that happen. As if reading his mind, the AI spoke up. "I can broadcast a different pheromone signal, one that will trigger their flight response, but you'll have to move quickly." Tyler nodded grimly. "Do it." Again the ship pulsed and thrummed. The acrid stench of fear pheromones filled the air. The Kaziks' technicians suddenly convulsed, mandibles clacking in terror. They abandoned their work and scuttled away, disappearing into the bowels of the ship. Tyler sprinted across the hangar, his boots ringing on the deck. He leapt into the Rakari ship's open hatch, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Seal the doors and prepare for launch," he shouted. The AI complied, and the hatch slid shut with a reassuring clang. Tyler threw himself into the pilot's seat, hands flying over the controls. The engines hummed to life, and the ship lifted off, turning towards the hangar's gaping exit. But as they accelerated towards open space, the AI's calm voice interrupted. "Warning! Detecting a foreign object attached to the hull. Analysis suggests it is a tracking device of Kazik's origin." Tyler's heart sank. He couldn't lead these monsters back to Earth, but he couldn't remove the tracker while in space either. He was trapped, damned if he did, and damned if he didn't. "There may be another way, human. I have analyzed the local star charts and detected a nearby nebula with unusual properties. It may be possible to use the nebula's radiation to mask our signature and throw off the tracking device." Tyler straightened, a flicker of determination rekindling in his chest. "Then that's where we're going. Plot a course for the nebula. We've got to shake these bugs before we can even think about going home." The AI complied, and the stars outside the view screen blurred into streaks of light as the ship leapt into FTL. Tyler watched the receding form of the Kazik's dreadnought, silently praying that this desperate gambit would work. The Rakari ship shuddered as it plunged into the swirling iridescent clouds of the nebula. Tyler gripped the controls tighter, his knuckles white. A strange tingling sensation washed over his body, like 1,000 tiny electric shocks dancing across his skin. "Warning!" the AI intoned. "The nebula's unique radiation is interfering with our systems. Expect power fluctuations and navigational anomalies." Tyler cursed under his breath, as if he didn't have enough problems already, but he couldn't turn back now. The nebula was his only chance to lose the Kazik's tracking device and throw his pursuers off his trail. He pushed the ship deeper into the mists, the view screen filling with a kaleidoscope of colors. Suddenly, a shrill beep cut through the tense silence of the cockpit. Tyler's heart raced as he scanned the sensor readouts, expecting to see the insectoid battleship hot on his heels. But what he saw instead made his jaw drop. There, drifting silently through the nebula's swirling depths, was a massive space station. It looked ancient, its hull pitted and scarred, but still intact. The AI complied, and a moment later it reported its findings. The station appears to be of unknown origin, predating both Rakari and Kazik's records. It is emitting a weak distress signal on a frequency not used by any known species. Tyler's mind raced. An unknown species. Here in the depths of uncharted space. It seemed impossible. But then again, he'd seen a lot of impossible things lately. He made a split-second decision. "We're going in. If nothing else, it might provide a place to hide while we figure out our next move." Tyler guided the Rakari ship towards one of the station's airlocks. It was a tight fit, but he managed to dock without incident. He checked his wrist communicator, making sure the AI was with him, then cautiously stepped aboard the station. The first thing that struck him was the sheer size of the place. The corridors stretched out before him, twisting and turning out of sight. The walls were lined with strange, organic-looking technology, pulsing with an eerie inner light. As Tyler explored deeper, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking through a tomb. The air was stale and heavy, and his footsteps echoed unnaturally in the oppressive silence. But what he found next made his blood run cold. The station was a repository of knowledge, containing the histories and wisdom of countless alien civilizations, many of them long extinct, lost to the ravages of time and the cruelty of the cosmos. The AI was fascinated, eagerly absorbing and analyzing the wealth of information. But for Tyler, the initial wonder quickly turned to horror as he stumbled upon a chilling revelation. The station also contained detailed records of the Rakari and Kha'Zix's conquests, the true extent of their atrocities across the galaxy, laid bare in cold, clinical detail. World after world subjugated, species after species enslaved or exterminated. And Earth was just the latest in a long line of victims. Tyler felt overwhelmed, his mind reeling from the scale of it all. The weight of responsibility crashed down on him, threatening to crush him. He wasn't just fighting for Earth anymore. He was fighting for every species the Rakari and Kha'Zix had wronged, for every voice that had been silenced, every civilization that had been snuffed out. As he delved deeper into the station's secrets, Tyler discovered a chamber filled with advanced alien weaponry and technology, devices beyond anything he had ever seen, even in the most advanced Rakari labs. These could be adapted to upgrade our ship's capabilities, the AI suggested, its holographic avatar flickering with excitement. With these enhancements, we might stand a chance against the Rakari and Kha'Zix fleets. Tyler nodded grimly. It was a long shot, but it was the only shot they had. He set to work, the AI guiding him as he integrated the alien tech into the Rakari ship's systems. But even as he worked feverishly, the AI's sensors detected a new signal emanating from within the nebula. A Kha'Zix scouting party, closing in on their location. Tyler's heart pounded as he raced against time, his hands flying over the unfamiliar controls. He had to finish these upgrades and get out of here before the Kha'Zix found him and the invaluable knowledge he now possessed. The fate of Earth and countless other worlds hung in the balance, and Tyler was their last desperate hope. Tyler's heart pounded as he raced through the ancient station's corridors, the metallic clang of his boots echoing off the walls. Behind him, the skittering of Kha'Zix claws grew louder, spurring him on. He clutched the alien weapon modifications tightly, knowing they were his only hope. "Hurry, Tyler," the AI urged through his wrist communicator. "The Kha'Zix are closing in." Tyler put on a burst of speed, his lungs burning. As he rounded the final corner, he saw the airlock ahead, the Rakari ship waiting beyond. But between him and salvation stood a phalanx of Kha'Zix warriors, their chitin armor glinting under the emergency lights. They turned as one, raising their plasma rifles. Tyler didn't hesitate. He dove forward, rolling under the first volley of sizzling plasma bolts. The shots scorched the wall behind him, filling the air with the acrid stench of melted metal. He came up firing, his own rifle spitting crimson beams that splashed harmlessly off the Kha'Zix's exoskeletons. The airlock door swished open, and Tyler lunged through, slamming his fist on the control panel. The hatch sealed just as the Kha'Zix opened fire again, their shots dissipating against the reinforced alloy. In the cockpit, Tyler slid into the pilot's seat, his hands flying over the controls. "All right, let's see what these upgrades can do," he muttered, slotting the alien devices into the ship's systems. The effect was immediate and startling. The control panel lit up with new glyphs and symbols, pulsing with an eerie green light. The ship's engines thrummed with renewed power, and the shield readout showed a shimmering iridescent field now enveloping the hull. Tyler grinned wolfishly as he gripped the control yoke. Outside, the Kha'Zix scout ships swarmed closer, their plasma cannons glowing with baleful light. Tyler punched the thrusters, and the Rakari ship leapt forward, the inertial dampeners struggling to compensate. The Kha'Zix ships opened fire, their shots flaring against the Rakari ship's enhanced shields. But instead of the expected impacts, the plasma bolts seemed to bend and distort, curving around the hull in defiance of physics. Tyler whooped in exultation. "Now it's our turn!" He swung the ship around in a tight arc, bringing the alien cannons to bear. The targeting reticle pulsed, locking onto the lead Kha'Zix ship. Tyler squeezed the trigger. A lance of scintillating emerald energy erupted from the cannons, so bright it seared Tyler's eyes. even through the cockpit's auto-tinting viewscreen. The beam sliced through the Kha'Zix's ship from stem to stern, bisecting it cleanly. For a moment, the two halves hung in space, glowing molten at the edges. Then they exploded, scattering debris across the void. The remaining Kha'Zix ships scattered, but Tyler was relentless. He swooped and dived, the alien weapons carving through the insectoid ships with contemptuous ease. In moments, the scouts were reduced to drifting wreckage, their reactors flickering and dying. But Tyler knew this was just the beginning. Somewhere out there, the Kha'Zix battleship lurked, and it would have detected the destruction of its scouts. He needed to press his advantage, to find a way to tip the scales before the full might of the invaders came crashing down on him. As if sensing his thoughts, the AI chimed in. "Tyler, while you were installing the upgrades, I took the liberty of analyzing the station's databanks further. I found a reference to a planet called Xylox 5, home to a long-dead civilization. The Xyloxians were said to have developed a weapon of immense power, capable of neutralizing entire fleets." "The records are unclear on the specifics," the AI admitted. "But it seems to have been a directed energy weapon of some kind, able to disrupt the fundamental forces that hold matter together. If we could find this weapon, it could be the key to defeating the Kha'Zix and Rakari." Tyler nodded, already plotting a course. "Then Xylox 5 is our next stop. Let's just hope this weapon is still there." The ship plunged back into the swirling nebula, its new engines leaving a fading trail of exotic particles in its wake. Tyler felt a flicker of hope kindle in his chest. For the first time since this nightmare began, he had a glimmer of a chance. That hope turned to ashes as the ship emerged from the nebula in the Xylox system. Arrayed before them was a scene out of the apocalypse. Dozens of Rakari and Kha'Zix capital ships hung in space, exchanging titanic broadsides that lit the void with actinic fire. Fighters swarmed between the behemoths like angry insects, their afterburners painting ephemeral contrails across the stars. And in the middle of it all, caught in the crossfire, was Xylox 5 itself. "My God," Tyler breathed. "What happened here?" "Analyzing," the AI replied. A moment later it spoke again, its tone grim. "It appears the Rakari and Kha'Zix both discovered the existence of the Xyloxian weapon. They're fighting for control of it. And the Xyloxian, they're just collateral damage." Tyler's hands clenched on the controls, his knuckles turning white. Rage and grief warred in his heart as he stared at the dying world below. How many other civilizations had been ground to dust beneath the invaders' heels? How many more would suffer if they weren't stopped? He took a deep breath, forcing his emotions under control. "If the weapon is down there, then that's where we're going. Plot a course and find me a landing zone away from the heaviest fighting. We'll have to go in quiet and fast." "Tyler, I must advise against this course of action," the AI said, a note of concern in its synthetic voice. "The odds of successfully navigating the planetary defenses and ground combat are—" "I don't care about the odds," Tyler snapped. "We have to try. If we can get that weapon, we might have a chance of ending this, of saving other worlds from the same fate. It's not just about Earth anymore." There was a moment of silence, then the AI spoke again, its tone resolute. "Very well, plotting a course. I will do everything in my power to assist you." Tyler nodded, his jaw set with determination. He knew this was a long shot. The Rakari and Kha'Zix would be gunning for him the moment they detected his ship, and even if he made it to the surface, he'd be walking into a war zone with no idea where the weapon was or how to use it. But he had to try. For Earth, for the Xyloxians, for every species that had been crushed under the invaders' might. He would find that weapon, and he would make them pay. The Rakari ship streaked towards Xylox 5, its upgraded shields flaring as it plunged into the maelstrom of the battle. Weapons fire crisscrossed around it, the near misses jolting the ship and sending tremors through the hull. Tyler gritted his teeth, his eyes locked on the view screen as he jinked and wove through the chaos. The AI had plotted a course to a landing site near the ruins of what had once been the Xyloxian capital, where the weapon was most likely to be found. But getting there would be a gauntlet of fire and death. Tyler lined up the reciprocal shot, his thumb hovering over the trigger. "Let's see how you like this," he muttered. He pressed the button. The Rakari ship's cannons flared, a searing lance of energy reaching out to impale the lead fighter. It vanished in a blinding flash, reduced to its component atoms in an instant. The remaining fighters scattered, but Tyler was already moving, the AI guiding his shots with uncanny precision. One by one, the Kha'Zix fighters bloomed into fireballs, their shattered hulls pinwheeling away into the void. But there was no time to celebrate. A Rakari destroyer had spotted them, its massive bulk swinging ponderously to bring its broadside batteries to bear. Tyler wrenched the controls, sending the ship into a corkscrewing dive just as a storm of missiles erupted from the destroyer's launch tubes. They swarmed after him like angry hornets, their guidance systems locked onto his engine signature. "Deploying countermeasures," the AI said. A series of small explosions burst around the Rakari ship as the AI launched decoys and chaff. Several of the missiles veered off course, detonating harmlessly in the void. But more kept coming, relentless and implacable. Tyler jinked and juked, pushing the inertial dampeners to their limits. Sweat beaded his brow as he wrestled with the controls, trying to shake the pursuit. "They're still gaining," he shouted over the blaring alarms. The missiles were closing the gap, their proximity warnings growing more strident with each passing second. "Initiating emergency warp jump," the AI responded, its voice eerily calm amidst the chaos. "Coordinates locked. Engaging in 3, 2, 1. The stars outside the view screen seemed to stretch and distort as the warp engines engaged. For a heart-stopping moment, Tyler felt like he was being simultaneously stretched and compressed, his atoms threatening to fly apart. Then, with a gut-wrenching lurch, the ship snapped back into real space, the warp jump complete. The missiles, suddenly robbed of their target, flew off into the void, detonating in a series of distant flashes. Tyler slumped back in his seat, his heart hammering against his ribs. "That was too close," he muttered. But there was no respite. They had jumped clear of the space battle, but now the looming bulk of Xylox 5 filled the viewscreen. The planet's surface was a hellscape of craters and glowing lava flows, the ruins of cities jutting like broken teeth amidst the devastation. "Beginning atmospheric entry," the AI reported. "Brace for turbulence." The ship shuddered as it plunged into Xylox 5's atmosphere, the heat of re-entry setting the hull aglow. Tyler gripped the armrests of his seat, his teeth rattling in his skull, as the ship bucked and jolted. Gradually the turbulence subsided as they descended into the lower atmosphere, but any relief Tyler might have felt was short-lived. As the ship leveled out over the ruined landscape, he saw the full extent of the devastation. The once proud cities of the Xyloxians were now little more than rubble, their soaring towers reduced to shattered stumps. Smoke and ash choked the air, turning the sky a sickly grey, and everywhere the signs of battle, the blackened craters of orbital bombardments, the twisted wrecks of vehicles, the charred remains of the dead. But it was the sight of the Xyloxians themselves that truly broke Tyler's heart. They were a proud people, with a rich culture and advanced technology. But now they were reduced to huddling in the ruins, their faces haggard and their eyes haunted. As the ship skimmed low over a ruined plaza, Tyler saw a group of Xyloxian children, their clothes tattered and their faces smudged with soot. They looked up at the passing ship with a mixture of fear and desperate hope, their eyes pleading for salvation. Tyler felt a lump form in his throat. He wanted to help them, to give them hope, but he knew he couldn't. Not yet. Not until he found the weapon that could turn the tide of this war. "There," the AI said, highlighting a section of the ruins on the viewscreen. "The weapon is likely to be housed in that structure, the central citadel of the Xyloxian government." Tyler nodded grimly. "Then that's where we're going." He brought the ship down in a clearing amidst the rubble, the landing gear crunching on the broken concrete. He checked his rifle and grabbed a few extra power cells, then stepped to the airlock. "Stay with the ship," he told the AI. "Keep the engines hot and the shields up. If anything happens to me, you get out of here, understand? Get back to Earth. Warn them about what's coming." "I cannot leave you, Tyler," the AI responded, a note of concern in its voice. "My primary directive is to ensure your safety and mission success." Tyler shook his head. "Your primary directive is to make sure the knowledge we've gained gets back to Earth. That's the only thing that matters now." Before the AI could respond, Tyler hit the controls and stepped out onto the surface of Xylox 5. The air was thick with the stench of smoke and death, and the heat of the nearby lava flows was like a physical weight pressing down on him. In the distance he could hear the sounds of battle, the chatter of weapons fire, the boom of explosions, the screams of the dying. Somewhere in that maelstrom was the weapon he sought, the key to ending this nightmare. Tyler checked his rifle one last time, then set off into the ruins, picking his way through the rubble toward the distant citadel. Overhead, the battle for Xylox 5 raged on, the fate of a world hanging in the balance. But for Tyler there was only the mission. Find the weapon, get it back to the ship, use it to save Earth, to save everyone, no matter the cost. He took a deep breath of the acrid air, feeling it sear his lungs. Then he started forward into the heart of the devastation, towards an uncertain fate. Tyler's heart pounded as he sent the Ricari ship hurtling into the maelstrom of the battle. Laser blasts and missile contrails crisscrossed the void, painting a deadly lattice of light against the stars. The AI worked furiously, its quantum processors calculating evasive vectors and spitting out course corrections faster than any organic mind could follow. A squadron of Kha'Zix's fighters swooped in, their plasma cannons spitting emerald death. Tyler gritted his teeth and squeezed the trigger, the ship's new weapons flaring to life. Lances of exotic energy pierced the void, slicing through the insectoid ships like a scalpel. Chitin shattered, and ichor boiled as the Kha'Zix fighters came apart, their remains tumbling away into the void. But there was no time to savor the victory. A massive shadow fell across the ship as a Ricari battlecruiser loomed into view, its gigantic cannons swiveling to lock onto Tyler's tiny vessel. He knew he couldn't go toe-to-toe with the behemoth. It would swat him like a fly. Instead, Tyler wrenched the controls, sending the ship into a dizzying spin. G-forces slammed him into his seat as he used Xylox 5's gravity well to slingshot around, coming up behind the battlecruiser. Before the Ricari could react, Tyler hammered the firing controls, unleashing a salvo of the alien weapons into the cruiser's engines. The result was cataclysmic. The exotic energy reacted violently with the Ricari ship's power core, setting off a chain reaction that tore through the vessel. Explosions rippled along its length, its hull plates buckling and shattering. With a final titanic blast, the battlecruiser came apart, reduced to a field of expanding debris. The shockwave slammed into Tyler's ship, sending it tumbling towards Xylox 5's surface. Alarms blared, and warning lights flashed as the hull groaned under the stress. Tyler fought with the controls, his vision graying out as the G-forces mounted. At the last moment he managed to level out, the ship's belly scorched from its brush with the atmosphere. Tyler brought the ship down in a clearing, amidst the ruins of a once great city. The landing was rough, the damaged ship skidding and bouncing before finally coming to rest. Tyler took a moment to catch his breath, his heart hammering against his ribs. But there was no time to rest. The AI had pinpointed the location of the Xyloxian weapon, a towering spire rising from the heart of the ruins. Tyler grabbed a pulse rifle from the ship's armory and set out, picking his way through the rubble. The signs of battle were everywhere. Burned-out shells of buildings loomed like blackened skeletons. The twisted wrecks of war machines littered the streets, some still smoking, and everywhere the bodies, Xyloxian and invader alike, locked in the eternal embrace of death. As Tyler neared the spire, a towering shape emerged from the shadows. A Ricari war mech, its black armor gleaming in the dim light. It swiveled to face him, its weapons glowing with deadly intent. Tyler dove for cover just as a storm of plasma bolts ripped through the air. The ground around him exploded, showering him with dirt and debris. He huddled behind a shattered wall, his mind racing. He was outgunned and outmatched. Then he saw it, a gaping hole in the mech's armor exposing its internal workings. A weak point if he could just get a clear shot. Tyler burst from cover, sprinting towards the mech. It tracked him with its weapon's plasma bolts chewing up the ground at his heels. He zigzagged and rolled, the heat of the plasma searing his skin. At the last second, he dropped into a slide, sparks flying as he skidded beneath the mech's legs. As he passed under the damaged section, he brought his rifle up and fired, pouring a stream of high-energy rounds into the mech's exposed guts. The effect was immediate. The mech convulsed, electricity arcing across its frame. Smoke and flames burst from its joints as it toppled, crashing to the ground in a thunderous cacophony of tortured metal. Tyler picked himself up, his ears ringing. The spire loomed ahead, tantalizingly close. He knew the Rakari and Khaziks wouldn't be far behind. He had to reach the weapon before they did. Taking a deep breath, he started forward into the unknown. "I've found a way in," he said, his voice tight with tension. The AI's response crackled through his wrist communicator. "Scanning now. The hatch appears to be sealed with an advanced Xyloxian security system. I'm detecting a complex series of locks and energy barriers." Tyler cursed under his breath. They didn't have time for this. The Rakari and Khaziks troops were closing in, their footsteps echoing through the ruins like a drumbeat of doom. "Affirmative, stand by." The AI went silent for a moment, and then the hatch shuddered and hissed open, revealing a dark passageway beyond. Tyler plunged inside, his pulse rifle at the ready. The corridor was narrow and dimly lit, the walls pulsing with luminescent conduits that cast an eerie glow. His footsteps echoed on the metal floor as he moved deeper into the structure. The passageway opened up into a vast circular chamber. Tyler's breath caught in his throat as he took in the sight. The walls were lined with more of the glowing conduits, all converging on a central platform. And there, resting on the platform, was the Xyloxian weapon. It was a thing of beauty, a sleek, crystalline device that seemed to hum with inner power. Tyler approached it cautiously, his hand outstretched. As his fingers brushed the smooth surface, the weapon pulsed with light, as if responding to his touch. Suddenly the AI's voice blared in his ear, urgent and alarmed. "Tyler, the chamber's sensors have detected multiple ships landing nearby. Rakari and Khaziks troops are making their way towards the spire. You have to move, now." Tyler snatched up the weapon, its weight reassuring in his hands. He turned to make his escape, but froze as a figure stepped out of the shadows, blocking his path. It was Horus, the Rakari trade minister, flanked by a squad of heavily armed soldiers. The alien's eyes glinted with malice as he sneered at Tyler. "You've led us on quite the chase, human, but it ends here. Hand over the weapon, and I might consider making your death quick and painless." Tyler's grip tightened on the weapon, his mind racing. He was hopelessly outnumbered. There was no way he could fight his way past Horus and his troops. That's when the AI spoke again, its voice calm and resolute. "Tyler, the weapon is designed to target specific genetic sequences. With the knowledge we've gathered, I believe I can calibrate it to affect only the Rakari and Khaziks, leaving humans and other species unharmed. But the process will require a significant power source, namely, my own core." Tyler's eyes widened in shock. "No, there has to be another way. I can't let you sacrifice yourself." "It's the only way, Tyler," the AI responded gently but firmly. "You must protect Earth and the other worlds threatened by the invaders. My existence is a small price to pay for the safety of countless lives." Tears welled in Tyler's eyes as the weight of the AI's words sank in. With a heavy heart he nodded, then turned to face Horus, a new determination burning in his gaze. "You're right, Horus, it does end here." He activated the weapon, the AI's core flaring brightly as it channeled its power into the device. A blinding wave of energy pulsed out from the spire, washing over the planet's surface. The Rakari soldiers crumpled to the ground, their lifeless bodies already starting to decay. In orbit, the Rakari and Khaziks ships drifted aimlessly, their crews reduced to dust. Tyler staggered out of the spire, the now inert weapon clattering to the ground beside him. He looked up at the sky, watching as the last of the invader ships burned up in the atmosphere. Earth was safe, as were countless other worlds, But the victory had come at a great cost. The AI, his constant companion and friend, was gone, sacrificed for the greater good. As Tyler made his way back to his ship, alone in the now silent landscape, he felt the weight of what had transpired settling on his shoulders. The scars left by the Rakari and Kaziks, both physical and emotional, would take a long time to heal. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.